But Mr. Dooley, what's the analysis? Gentlemen, here's my answer. I have decided to start recording these mini lectures where I focus specifically on analysis. Hopefully these are helpful. These lessons that I'll be posting on YouTube will not replace our in-class work together. They will not replace my in-class lecture, but they will serve to bolster and reinforce some of the analyses of what we'll derive. I'll go into examples sometimes, other times I'll just point the way forward for you to dig into the verses and the chapters on your own. So let's start off. We're in a new unit. We're in the book of Judges, one of my favorite books to teach. Joshua we called one of the most violent books in the Bible, if not the most violent book in the Bible. Judges will continue with that same level of violence, but we will add in a new level of depravity. As we find the Israelites, the Hebrews, the Jews now in the Promised Land, we will still very clearly see that their hearts are far from the Lord, and there's a lot of important stuff in these books. Our unit goal is to go over the major motifs, which means patterns, models, both good and bad, and movements of the book of Judges. Today we'll focus specifically on a movement as we try to distill the cycle of the book of Judges and get a grand picture of the whole thing. Our essential question of the book of Judges is, what does it offer us as modern readers? And you bet it offers us many, many things. It's a lesser-known book. It's not talked about as much in modern day like Genesis or the Gospels or Exodus. But there is wisdom and there is some gold in this story. So let's hop right in. Just a reminder of the time period. Last semester we finished off with the desert wanderings and the entry into the Promised Land with Joshua. Our time period right now is 1400 BC to about 1050 BC, so a while ago. We're going to cover the book of Judges in the next 3 lessons before we hop right into the royal kingdom. As a reminder, we are in the green hills of Canaan. The Israelites are now in the Promised Land. They have followed God after 40 years in the desert of testing and trial. However, they have not, as we'll see in chapter 1 of the book of Judges, driven out the whole people of the land, and that's going to cause a few problems. Let's hop right in. The questions and our objective for today are to distill the cycle of the book of Judges. I'll talk a little bit in this video about what I mean by distill. I'll talk and define Judges, and we'll go over some examples and, of course, analyses for this lesson. Starting right off, to distill is to extract the essential meaning of something. I talk about the analogy of orange juice. Oftentimes on the back of an orange juice container, you'll see the words not made from concentrate or made from concentrate. What that means is they take a bunch of concentrated oranges and then add some water in and you've got your orange juice. With distill, I want to do the exact opposite. I want to take the story and pull out all the non-essential parts. So pulling out almost all the examples in order to get to the key teachings, the key movements, and the key motifs. Now, what is a judge? A judge in the biblical context is not like Judge Judy determining court cases. A judge in the biblical context in this book is a military leader appointed by God. Importantly, and as we'll see throughout the next few lessons, these judges, while appointed by God and raised up by God, they are not perfect. Okay? They will be very, very flawed characters. Some of the most flawed characters that we encounter in the Bible. However, just a quick analysis on that is the people God appoints are not perfect. That does not mean they're not appointed by God. Our leaders today are not perfect. That does not mean they deserve disrespect or disobedience. Okay? It just highlights the fact that all people, with some minor exceptions that we'll get to later on this semester, are imperfect. Let's dive right in. Chapter 1. So chapter 1 highlights the main fact that the Canaanites are still in the land. What's the analysis from this? Why is this fact important or meaningful? What does it show? Well, it highlights the fact that those who surround us influence us. You've heard of the term peer pressure. Your parents and teachers have been reminding you that the people you spend your time with end up influencing you. So that's the problem, or that's the analysis for chapter number 1. I highlighted the verses 27 through 36 that will highlight the specific instances of this with the different Canaanite tribes. But importantly, the analysis is that those who surround us, those we spend our time with, influence us. So now that we have the context and background of the book of Judges, let's dive into the actual specifics. I'm going to highlight some analyses from chapter 1 to chapter 3. Starting with chapter 1, the Canaanites are still in the land. This is highlighted in verse 27 through 36. Now, what is the analysis here? The basic distillation of the analysis is that your peers influence your actions. Your peers influence your actions. Your teachers have told you this. Your parents have told you this. The people you hang around with end up having an impact on what you do, what you think, and very importantly for this book, how or who or what you worship. So chapter 1, this is a problem because the Canaanites will influence the Israelites. Chapter 2, here's the analysis. This is where the idolatry actually starts. At the beginning of chapter 2, the people are reminded that God has brought them out of the land of Egypt and brought them into the land of Canaan, and that they failed to drive out the Canaanites, and God allowed them to fail. Here are the potential analyses that I want to distill for you all. Is that your disobedience will lead to slavery. This is disobedience in terms of worship. They were supposed to worship the one God, and they fail to, and this leads to slavery and oppression. Okay? Number 2, they follow other gods because they forget their God. We talked about this in the book of Exodus, the importance of memory. This theme will come up. The cycle will keep reoccurring of sin, disobedience, slavery, oppression, deliverance because of a failure in memory. This will be highlighted in chapter 2. And finally, the nations are allowed, meaning the nations of the Canaanites, are allowed to continue to exist in the land. God doesn't just wipe the slate clean, according to the book of Judges, because they will serve as tests. What can we distill from this? What can we analyze this? God allows for temptation in order, not because he doesn't know whether we will follow him. Ooh, this is a test. We're going to see, can the Israelites, can the Christians follow me? No, it's to allow our hearts to actually be tried. I'll use a lifting analogy. Let's say you're on the squat rack and you're unsure of whether you will be able to lift something. Now, if you successfully lift it, not only do you prove, but also you improve. So I'll go over that again. You prove that you can do something, but as a result, you build, you improve as a result. So the presence of the nations, God allows them to coexist with the Israelites as a way of showing and forthcoming their fidelity to him by challenging their memory, by challenging them with peer pressure. He will allow them to continually exist. Chapter 3 is where we hop into our first few judges. Now there are 12 times at least that this cycle will reoccur. Othniel is our first cycle. You'll go over that during your term. And Ehud I want to highlight for 3 specific instances. Ehud is described as a left-handed swordsman, and this will come about very importantly because he will actually do an assassination on a king who is oppressing the people and continue that cycle of deliverance and salvation that will lead to 40 years or so of peace and right worship. However, I want to highlight some specific things about Ehud and that will speak generally to the judges overall. The judges are not perfect. They are not morally perfect characters. Yes, they are appointed by God, but no, he does not sanction all of their actions. Furthermore, life, according to the book of Judges, is extremely violent, filled with the horrors of sin. Now, when we turn away from God, right away, this goes all the way back to Genesis, all hell breaks loose, quite literally. And we'll see that on full display in the book of Judges. The book of Judges is not a children's book. It does not shy away from the fact that life is violent. Which brings me to my last analysis. Why should we read the book of Judges? Well, it serves as a modern reminder that life is never so bad as it is in the book of Judges. What do I mean by this? More often than not, in modern day, we will use the word unprecedented. Oh, this is unprecedented political times. Oh, we've never experienced something like this before. Any person who has read the book of Judges laughs at such a statement. Things have been bad before. Things will be bad again. Very rarely will they get as bad as the book of Judges. So in that way, in a strange paradoxical way, the book of Judges is a book of great hope. Looking forward to moving on to our next lesson.